Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 704. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, we talk leadership with Stuart Leo, founder and CEO of Waymaker IO. One of the reasons I really enjoy interviews is that I often stumble across great stories. Stuart's entrepreneurial origin story includes golf balls, icy Tasmanian lakes, and scuba divers. I'll remember this story until I die. Stuart is a global thinker in strategy, systems, and leadership development. As the founder of Waymaker IO, he has led the creation of Waymaker's Leadership Curve, a revolutionary way of building clarity, alignment, and remarkable results for any organization. Are you ready to go wading in icy Tasmanian lakes? It's time for the interview. Stuart Leo, founder and CEO of Waymaker IO. Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Tom, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am looking forward to this conversation. And it's always fun to talk to somebody who's actually from the future, being that it's the next day morning where you're at. So I'm glad that the next day morning actually happens. Let's start. Waymaker IO, relatively new company. How would you classify that as a company? Is this a software company, technology company, software-enabled company? How would you go with that?
I think the best description I would say is we're a digital business, and we're empowered principally by a technology platform. We're building a software platform that enables us to be a digital business to service our customer, which is coaches and consultants and their clients all around the world. And so everything we do is digital. We provide our software digitally around the world through the cloud. It's a strategy cloud to build a better business. We train and equip coaches, consultants, and their clients through Waymaker Academy digitally. It's all on-demand learning. And we're building a small community, a growing, not so small anymore, community of people who love building a better business. And that is centered around continuous improvement, leadership, and building adaptive businesses who can win in a very disruptive world.
When I hear people describe better businesses and things like that, why don't you define what would make a business or any organization great?
Any business is better if they have looked at last quarter and said, how do we improve and take steps to make it better next quarter? And if you're doing that, you're a better business. We should only ever compare ourselves to yesterday, not our competitors, not the people we aspire to be, but rather how well are we performing. And so I just so believe in the art of continuous improvement that if you're looking at what you did yesterday and you're taking steps to improve it tomorrow, then you're a better business and you're going to build a better business. You will ultimately win because a 1% improvement each day will result in a transformation in a very rapid time.
Was that the path, or is that the path you're taking at Waymaker?
Is that the path?
Yeah. So if you're describing continuous improvement, you're suggesting that that's what makes an organization great or better. Is that your way of leading at Waymaker IO?
Yeah. In fact, we have used the principles of Waymaker ourselves since before Waymaker existed. And Waymaker is built on this idea of asking and answering 7 questions to move yourself up a growth continuum. Our software helps you ask and answer those questions. The software tracks and benchmarks you across hundreds of data points around those 7 questions. And in fact, we built our first diagnostic way back in the day when we were a previous consulting group, and back in 2012, 2013. And we adopted it ourselves as our own business practice in about 2014, 15. And ever since then, every quarter we've asked ourselves the 7 questions. We've done question 7. We've come together every week or fortnight to review our progress and remove risks and roadblocks. And that process has helped us completely reinvent to go from a professional services business and decide, actually, no, we need to become a technology-based business, navigate through that difficulty, navigate through the challenges of pandemics, and ultimately build a platform that coaches and consultants and their clients can use to build better businesses. And so we live and breathe actually what we do, and we love it. Because it's actually quite simple, and the process of doing this is simple because it's just asking and answering 7 questions. It's hard in the execution, but the art of asking the questions is simple, and it's a great way to have a standard, a benchmark, common language, and in the way we run the business. And in fact, that's really where this whole process started, because it was a journey we discovered from the British military, actually. And I know the Americans don't always love the British, and hey, we're Australians, we don't always love the British either, but they're our Commonwealth, they're our friends, and we can always learn from other organisations. And actually there was a really good learning from the British military that I stumbled across back around 2010, 11, 12. And it was when they realised that coming out of the 20th century and coming into the 21st century, that they were a very bloated, top-down driven, highly structured, highly traditional organisation. And that type of organisation was going to fail, and fail terribly, in the theatre of war in the 21st century. And they had to take a very long, hard look at how they were operating in the theatre of war and in the battlefield. And they realised that they needed to become more agile, they needed to decentralise, and they needed to build a much better culture of leadership. And in fact, the way they did that was to create 7 questions that they would ask and answer on the battlefield to execute what you would call a combat estimate, which every army in the world does that process. You, as a commander or a corporal or a sergeant or a lieutenant on the battlefield, you have to plan. You have to put a plan together to reach your objective. And as the British military realised that, gosh, our traditional planning methods, they're bloated, they're structured, they're too over the top, we need to rethink this. They developed these 7 questions they would teach their commanders on the battlefield to ask and answer, which to this day is still how they develop battlefield plans. And it's transformed the way they operate in the field of war. And it's 7 questions. And it created a very agile, a very decentralized, a very leadership-centric and empowering culture, which developed the highest value course of action on the battlefield. And I came across this story of how they went through that journey in the late 80s and 90s and institutionalized it. And so by the early 2000s, it was a standard. It was how they did their business. And I was coming out of corporate life, and I love corporates. I had some of my best and worst times in corporate life. But we all know in corporate world, there's lots of bureaucracy. And I remember coming out of just a very bureaucratic environment, reading the story of the British military who had achieved that transition into a great leadership culture, into agile, into decentralized decision making. And they did it by simply asking and answering 7 questions. And I was just really inspired to go, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if we could do that in business? If you can do it with the bullets firing, surely you can do it in business. The problem was that if you look at those questions coming out of the military, they're actually designed to blow something up. They're designed to cause damage. When we're in business, actually, we generally don't want to cause damage. We want to build something up. And so that started a journey of going, well, inspired by the military, but could we develop a set of questions that, if asked and answered on a consistent basis, would continuously develop the highest value course of action, continuously improve the clarity and the alignment of what we're doing, and shift the focus on the navel gazing into execution. So you did this through execution. And if we could do that, then we could transform not only ourselves, but the clients we're serving and others. And that started a journey of going, right, let's develop a set of questions that business can use to be as effective and as powerful as a special forces team out in the desert or in the mountains building a battle plan. And so just like a just like the military have when they're asking and answering questions, they've got some software in their hands. We're a technological world today. And when they're developing a battle plan, they've got software in their hands, helping them ask and answer those questions. So we thought, well, we've got to build some software. We've got to do that. And so we built some software to help organizations gather more data and process that data in real time, so that as a team, you can ask and answer what we developed, which was also 7 questions. Coincidentally, the same number of questions, but it matches the story quite nicely. And as you ask and answer those questions, the software is helping you gain greater clarity objectively into what's going into your organization, build improved alignment so people understand where they're going and why they're going there, but shifts the focus onto execution. And because it's through execution that stuff changes. Nothing ever changes in the boardroom. Maybe a mind, but that mind is only ever solidified when you go out and do. And so we had to build a process. So Waymaker empowers people to ask and answer 7 questions every quarter or half. Do question 7, which is what are the 1 or 2 or 3 things that, if delivered in this organization, shift the needle. Come together every week or fortnight to identify roadblocks and risks, remove them together, and get on with delivering, and rinse and repeat. And the first 6 questions revolve around clarity of vision, clarity of market focus, clarity of strategy and positioning, and clarity of business model and value, clarity of the customer experience and how we acquire, retain, and grow customers through sales and marketing and service, and then clarity of the employee experience, how we develop our talent through our principles of culture. And then as we rotate through that awareness building and clarifying process, we're effectively turning the boardroom into a highly focused, agile operation and transcending that out through the organization. It's kind of a big picture, but I hope that kind of makes sense there, Tom.
Yeah, it does. Those 7 questions, have they evolved since you began, or do you ever see them evolving?
Yeah. Have they evolved? Absolutely. On our journey to developing these 7 questions, at one point they were 5 questions. At another point they were 6 questions. I spent about 5 or 6 years trying to write 5 or 6 or 7 questions with a couple of other people as well, and then I bounced them off. In the end, I couldn't get past 7. I was like, it kind of fits as 7. So I was like, all right, I'm going to stay with 7 questions. But yes, they've evolved. They've been developed over about 10 years. And I can tell you, 10 years of my life have been writing and rewriting just 7 questions, which sounds insane when you think about it. But actually, every word in those 7 questions matters and is carefully thought about, because it actually connects to the data model and hundreds of other data points that is connected into the software. And so there's, compounding thousands of implications off just 27, 30 words.
The word in the software, as I was reading about it, gets used is intelligent. Why do we think of, or why should we think of Waymaker.io as intelligent? What makes it that?
Yeah, great question. We do in a few minutes, 5 or 10 or 15 minutes, what a traditional management consultant would do over 4 to 6 weeks and for tens of thousands of dollars.
But that would be billable time for them.
Yeah, and that is true. Sometimes it's billable and sometimes it's not. We meet lots of management consultants that do what we laugh about, which is the dance of discovery. You go into an organization and you meet with the CEO and the leader, and then they go, go meet with head of HR, go meet with my ops manager, go meet with sales, go meet with marketing, go meet with this person. And kind of 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later and 10 or 15 meetings later and literally 30, 40 hours later, not just in meetings, but in sitting there kind of compiling and reading stuff, a consultant will come back to that CEO and say, okay, I've put my thoughts together, and I think we need to focus on this and this and this because of what I can see going on. And they said, we can't afford in this world to take 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to come up with these insights, because we're going to be dead if we can't do it in a matter of minutes. If we can't take what would normally take 6, 7, 8, 10 days and compress it into 30 minutes or a few hours, then we cannot be agile and adaptive on the battlefield. And it's the same for an organization. So what we do is, more often than not in our research, we find that those management consultants aren't paid for what they're really worth in that process. Sometimes they're still in business development. And two, the organization doesn't actually get started on value creation until you've had that. And we'd much prefer to see a coach or a consultant get in there and in the first or second meeting and lift up the areas of insight and then go, we need to focus here. Now let's start peeling deeply the layers of the onion here, because they're immediately adding value. And if they're adding more value, then they should be getting paid more. And so we make it far easier for coaches and consultants to get to the point of value creation and to go deeper and sustain that for a longer period of time, because the cycle repeats. And so we practice at our early stage. We're still a startup, so we're very young. So I say it's very light, narrow AI, if I can use that term. I don't know if that term makes sense to you, but I love the idea of narrow, broad kind of AI, where we live in the narrow AI space. And we kind of do, if we think about it, if a doctor in a hospital, when they take a scan, maybe they take an MRI or they take a scan of somebody's lungs using an X-ray. In today's world, they're not necessarily picking up that X-ray and sticking it up on a light board and looking at it. Rather, they're putting it on a scan, and a computer is reading that and it's processing that, because it's processed 10,000 scans before, and it's a software program that's learning and continuously improving to identify gaps and improvements, and then in a few seconds it tells the doctor, hey, you should look at this, this, and this, and then make a judgment call. And that's kind of what we're doing with Waymaker. We've processed thousands and thousands and thousands of data points and organizations and businesses, and our data model today is remarkably better and different than what it was 6, 9, 12 months ago. And it will continue to do that. And so we'll continue to surface gaps and insights on organizations faster and better, because we will empower the coach or the consultant with greater information to make better decisions in advising their client. Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, it does. This may be an improper categorization or attribution, but it sounds like human-aided machine learning, or machine learning that aids human delivery.
Yeah, and as a technical expert, you've put the right language around that. And I'm not the technical founder. I'm the founder of the business, but we have, like many people, technology and machine learning and data models are new languages that, whether we're from a technical background or not, we have to wrestle with and grapple with. And so I do that as a business owner and an entrepreneur. Am I writing the code? No, I'm not. But am I sitting there thinking about how we can use it more effectively? Yes. And I think that's been a great learning as a business person, to go, gosh, the world is moving fast. I don't always understand exactly what's under the bonnet of what's being done, but gee whiz, I'm going to give it a good crack, because if 20 years ago I'd said, wow, there's this new thing called email, it's too hard and complicated, I'm going to stick to my fax and my letters and my memos, where would we be? It would be a disaster. So, I look at this new world of data and machine learning, and data is oxygen. And if we can't have data and understand data and process data in this new world, then we don't have oxygen and we cannot run our business. It's just the learning I think you got to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I actually did see a fax machine the other day, and it's like, oh my God, what's that? Yeah, that was like, ooh, is this a museum? Yeah, Stuart, you mentioned being the founder of Waymaker IO. You founded other firms. This is a serial thing for you. What have you learned along the way that has enabled you to, I think it was Blurt, right, that you founded, and now Waymaker IO. What's the big learning that you'd like to share about being a founder, a serial founder?
Yeah. It's a terrible disease. It's I'm sure there's mental treatment for it somewhere. I my first job as a kid, I was 10 or 11 or 12, and we lived in a tourist town in a little island called Tasmania off the southern coast of Australia, which is at times closer to Antarctica than most other parts of Australia. And so it's cold, it's wilderness, it's a beautiful part of the world, much like maybe parts of the Great Lakes where you are right now. And there was this little golf course just near our house, and little 9-hole kind of tourist golf course. Most of the people on that golf course weren't very good, which was great because there was lots of lakes. So as a kid, I'd ride my bike down to the golf course. Apologies for the background noise. There's some helicopters going overhead.
No problem.
I'd ride my bike down to this golf course, and as a kid, you go exploring after school, and I'd watch these, older gentlemen and ladies who are not very good having a hit and a giggle.
We call those duffers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. We'll call them duffers. And, ping off the tee. Where does it go? It goes straight in the water. Sometimes they'd reach in with a little grabber thing and get it out. Most of the time they couldn't. They'd give up, walk away. And I'm like, that's, I reckon I could get those golf balls. I reckon I could get maybe 10 or 20 cents for a golf ball. And so jump on the bike. I'd wait till they'd go past. I didn't care. I was in my board shorts and a T-shirt after school, and I'd just walk into the muddy lake, feel it with my feet or see it, pick it up and stick it in a bag. And as I was doing that, people on the golf course would go, I'm out of golf balls. I've put them all in the lake. Can I buy one from you? And I'd go, sure. And they'd go, how much? And I'd go, and I didn't understand negotiation as a 10-year-old. And I'd say 50 cents. And they go, no worries. We'll take 2. And so I'd say $1 because I thought that was negotiating. You would say a number and they would say yes or no or another number. And then you'd come back and give them another number, and they'd laugh and they'd go, oh yeah, okay, $1 then. And I'm like, oh gee, I'm good at this. And I was a terrible salesman. I was probably just a cute fat kid that was cold, and they took pity on. But I suddenly realized that people were willing to pay 50 cents or $1 for their golf balls. And so my brother and I would get on our bikes and we'd head down, and every afternoon we'd start collecting these golf balls, come back with a haul of 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. And we did that. And that kind of sparked in me this idea of, wow, you can get out there and you can find a problem and you can do something, and you can create a business. And I bought a new mountain bike. I bought stuff. I was rolling in the cash as a 12-year-old, making $50 or $100 a month, as this little kid in the country of Tasmania. But it taught me something. It taught me some resilience, because I can tell you in Tasmania, which, one of its closest neighbours is Antarctica, wading into a muddy lake in 2 degrees is not much fun. And so you learn the art of resilience. Sun's going down, it's getting cold. You learn to hustle, because mum's going to get cranky if you're not home on time. Learn to solve problems, because we became so successful that the golf course, initially they were our best customer, because they would buy the golf balls back from us. And then they wanted to kind of clamp us out, because they were like, oh, we want to send divers in and do this. And they
Sure.
They refused to buy our golf balls from us. But we were still cheeky, and we went in after hours and fished out the lakes, which was probably wrong and illegal, but we were kids. And my dad would stick us in the car and we'd drive across town and we'd sell it to the competitor, who would give us 50 cents a golf ball. And we negotiated an ongoing deal. And every month we'd pack up our boxes of apple crates with golf balls, and we'd walk in and we'd stick it on the bench, and he'd go count them, and he'd go, yep, all right, there's $120. Cash in the pocket out the door. So we had competition, we had problems to solve, we had challenges, we had market forces at play, we had substitution, we had digital disruption with new technology coming to play, because divers started going into the golf course lakes. And anyway, so it taught me from a very young age the joy of business, the resilience that you need in leadership and business, and that business is about solving problems. And I wasn't very good at it. It took a long time to learn. My hardest and best lessons were when I actually did it for real, leaving corporate life. But I think as a kid, that's where I learned and I tasted the joy of what it means to create a business.
That might be the best story about the inception of becoming an entrepreneur I've had on the podcast, and I've had a few. That's fantastic. By the way, I think the diver overhead, that must have killed them. That made those 50-cent golf balls a whole lot more expensive. Divers.
That's right. Yeah. When we saw the divers coming in to compete with us, we were like, really? Like, we're just kids trying to buy some icy bowls and a BMX, dude. Like, if we were any smarter and less, entrepreneurial, we would probably unionized and picketed the golf course. But instead, we just went in at different times and got the job done a different way. But anyway, now I've brought politics into the conversation.
That's okay. Regardless, without all that, Waymaker.io probably wouldn't exist. If you had a piece of advice for a budding entrepreneur that was out there, maybe with a technical background, thinking about jumping into building a platform like you have, what one piece of advice would you give them other than, well, obviously, I doubt that you would really ever want to go and seek treatment for this serial entrepreneurship.
Yeah, no, don't go and seek treatment. In fact, nurture it and flourish it. It's a wonderful gift or itch, if you want to call it that you're blessed with. I think the best advice or feedback, my wife and I have always said, having started and run a few different businesses over the years, that the business you start is never the business you run. And there's this adventure you go on in business and organizational management that's really quite special in the foundational parts of the business. When you're going from ideation to market fit and developing skills and teams. And the business you start is never the business you run. And that can be really surprising. You can start out and think you're running this type of business. But the minute you go and try and sell something and you get some customer feedback, you realize it's not quite that. And you got to just tweak it a little bit and you got to move it a little bit. And so there's this real joy in the to and fro of business. And so I think the most valuable learning and insights you ever get in business come from customer feedback. And so when you can go out and pitch something or sell something and work with it, and then you get feedback in, I just think that's a phenomenal journey. And too many people give up when they get the feedback because they've got this kind of fixed idea of the business they want to start and run, and they're not malleable enough to take on the continuous improvement. Too many people are afraid and try and be too perfect and push something out there that's too advanced. And it's better to be a bit rough around the edges and maybe offend a few people, but get some great feedback from others and make it better. And so they give up. And too many people, I think, are just too afraid to try. And I remember when I left corporate life around 2010, 11, corporates bring infrastructure, technology systems and processes and platforms and systems. And at the time, the iPhone was 4 or 5 years old. Facebook and social media were 3, 4, 5 years old. The capacity to buy cloud was just coming alive. And I remember stepping back and saying to a friend of mine, you know what, for about $50 a month, I've just turned on a more powerful, easier to manage, more effective technology platform than I had inside this global multi kind of whatever corporation. And it costs less and it works better and it's easier to manage and I can do business from wherever I like. And I realized that, in today's world, it has never been easier to create a new business. And in fact, the thing that today's world needs most desperately are better businesses. because it's through business that we build families and communities and we connect people. It is social glue that gives people jobs and meaning and purpose in the work they do. And if we can spark and help inspire new and better businesses, then we're building better communities. Those communities are slightly different because we're a digital world. Sure, sometimes that community is local, sometimes that community is global, sometimes it's both. But the reality is it's never been a better time to start a business. And the systems and the skills you can acquire at such low cost right now compared to what my grandfather or father had to go through, off the charts. And so I think the greatest advice and feedback I could give is if you have an idea and you can market test it, whether inside an existing organization or outside of that existing organization, get out there and do it, because there is a very rich opportunity right now as the world changes and turns, and pandemics and disruption and new opportunities, that you can build incredibly successful, small, big, or very large businesses. And you can have a very rewarding life doing that.
That is a phenomenal answer. It's so phenomenal. I'm not even going to ask the two things in the magic wand question that I have asked roughly 600 people. I want to end on that. Stuart Leo, CEO, founder of Waymaker.io. How would people continue the conversation? How would they reach out, find out about Waymaker, find out about you?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Jump onto Waymaker.io. If you're a coach or consultant, check out our partner program. We've been described as the most affordable, agile 21st century solution to coaching, consulting, and advisory business. If you're a business, jump on, put your leadership team through the diagnostic. We have a 30-day free trial. So whether you go ahead or not, I guarantee you'll learn something because you can access that diagnostic and use it on your own business. And if you want to connect with me, go for it. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm a terrible social media guy, but I will accept your LinkedIn. I will respond to your message, and from there you can track me down. But I'm active on LinkedIn. I'm probably on other socials, but gee whiz, I'm terrible at them. So get me on LinkedIn, and you can get anything you need from Waymaker.io.
Again, Stuart Leo, this has been fantastic.
Tom, it's been a real pleasure. Thank you for having me. I wish you the very best.
In Reread Saturday News, this week's chapter of Why Limit WIP, We Are Drowning in Work, opens with a quote from the Dalai Lama, linking effective self-discipline with awareness of consequence. The chapter, titled Awareness, speaks to me of redemption. Awareness is a precursor to shedding helplessness and ignites the desire to act. Link in the show notes to this installment in the series and all of the others in the current series, and a link in the show notes to buy a copy of the book. In the software process of measurement cast number 705, we define the term flow. I listened to a conversation last week. The term flow was used 30-ish times in 30 minutes, just about once a minute. Each use of the term meant something different. Let's draw a line in the sand to improve communication. We also have a visit from Susan Parente, who brings another fabulous installment of Not a Scrumdimentalist to the podcast. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?